Hi everyone, welcome to day 4 of our Photoshop challenge. We've been exploring textures and really cool creative effects in Adobe Photoshop on day 1, 2, and 3. So if you didn't catch those, make sure to restream them and leave a nice like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube where you can keep up with even more live streams just like this one. So today we're gonna do my favorite part, which is the part where you get to celebrate the work that you've done. So, marketing is an important part of showcasing your work, showcasing your artwork, your photography, anywhere online. We have a plethora of options, right? We do have spaces like social media, but I also want to share some other spaces that I personally love using for my photography to be appreciated, So, let's jump right in and get to start our marketing showcase. So we're going to jump into Photoshop and we're going to jump into the platforms, some of my favorite platforms. All right, say hello in the chat. Let me know where you're joining from and what mood are you in. Show me with your favorite emoji. All right, let's jump right in. Okay. Lower the volume a little bit here just to make sure. Okay, so one of the locations I like using, probably very commonly, just you probably like it too, is social media. Okay, it's a free platform. You can make it what you want, right, with it. So I do jump into social media to showcase my work and most of all the process of my work. So if you're ever online, you know that you feel that pressure of like posting online. It's totally understandable. It requires a lot of energy. And I'm going to show you a couple of the workflows that I like using in Photoshop to make that workflow a little bit faster and easier to iterate. Also, another space that I love publishing in is on Behance. So if you're on Behance, you already know the deal. It's a really cool space where there are so many kinds of creatives of different disciplines. So you get to explore all sorts of cool things. This is my profile where I like showcasing my process and my workflow, some which we've gone live with on here in Adobe Live. So let me click on one of these here. There you go. So this is a place where I like to showcase my work. A little description comes in and it's able to upload pretty high res. So it's really nice because you get to showcase your work in a very easy way. Sometimes my work blends into mixed media. So this is a project we worked in the past here on Adobe Live, generating different ingredients. That was really cool. So I get to showcase the process here. But once you click on it, you realize they're all kind of like independent layers. And this is where Photoshop comes in. So we're going to try to recreate some of these, and you're going to get access to one of these templates also. So this is what it looks like, the Behance template, where you get a banner at the top, the main image, some ingredients to showcase process, a little bit of image variation, and last but not least, a call to action or a thank you. And this is the way I like to structure myself. So let's revisit Behance here to see what that tends to look like, right? So you can see it back here. We've got our intro, we've got our ingredients, we've got some more ingredients, and then some photo variation. And finally, a little call to action. So for me, it's rewatch, restream. For you, it could be, hey, connect with me, or thank you for your support, or anything of that likes. Okay, so let's jump in here and see what we've gathered throughout our week and in experimenting with Photoshop with portraits and textures. So here's day 1. Day 1, we were playing with textures that were generated here in Adobe Photoshop. So let's do a full frame right here. And this was really cool, right? So I grabbed an image and I was able to create this really cool effect, which is also available, I think, in the starting assets. And it looks so cool and so neat. And there's something really awesome about the fact that I generated this here in Photoshop, right? It's not an actual glass effect. Then we had, let's see here, we've had this scan texture. So we had this really cool experiment also with similar photos where we got to play around with scan textures that I scanned here on my little scanner. I ripped up some paper and we were able to play around with how can you blend portraiture with some textures that you grab from your world, right? So that's really cool. Now, final one we did was a double exposure. So we played with several images that we can incorporate into a singular portrait to add texture, but also to play around with the possibilities of that portrait's expression. And I think that's really cool, right? So we go a little bit beyond just taking a snapshot. We step in here and play around with mixed media, because why not? Sometimes some portraits deserve that, right? So that said, we're going to bring in all of these ingredients into this Behance page. And we're going to do it pretty rapid fire because we may not have too much time. So this is a nice challenge for me too. All right. So here's what I've gathered so far. So the first thing I like to do is to make sure to collect some final edited images. So I've got a folder here with some final edited images, and they look a little like this. I'm just gonna drop them in. Okay, so what I wanna do is an experience that feels like there's before and afters available. But what you might notice is that I'm working in artboards right here, much like you would in Adobe Illustrator. Illustrator is really known for their artboards. Well, in here we can also incorporate artboards. If your file is not an artboard, you can go here, File, Layer, New, and then go into artboards right here. Okay, so I can add more artboards by clicking the plus and whichever direction, and that's the way I'm gonna do it. Okay, so the first thing I want to say here is I want to incorporate this image. These are my final image variations. These are really cool, so I can zoom them in here if I want to, or I can keep them kind of in that ratio. Now, if I wanted more variations, I can add a plus sign here, remove that file. You can see I'm just dragging between each artboard, and it's quite simple. And what happens is that it gets populated in each of my folders. So each artboard has its own folder, right? So if we label this one, we can see that's this artboard right here. So that's really cool. Another thing I want to do is change the background color. I think images can be better experienced when there's black backgrounds most of the time. So that's a cool way to approach this. So I think I'm gonna keep it pretty neutral and use black on these artboards as opposed to white. So all I did here is click on this artboard and click black. If your background is black and you can't see your artboard, you can always click here on the right hand side and find any of these alternatives. So I'll do that one for now. Okay, so I can play with this one here, also do black. And I think in the banner, I'm gonna add a bit of an intro text layer. And this is gonna be called texture experimentation or something like this. So I love that I always have the contextual bar here available so I can play around with different fonts. And let's make it a different color so there's better visibility here. Awesome. So we're gonna write, textures, typos, textures, and I can do like in Adobe Photoshop or something like this, right? So this is cool because this is gonna stand in as our banner. And I think what I'm gonna do here is give it a little bit of oomph and maybe play around with, let's see, a little bit of warping maybe. So filter, what is it usually? Oh, I have to click inside the text right here. So I was looking for this little icon. So that's create warp text. And we can give it a little bit of oomph, right? So a little bit of wave oomph right here. Ooh, now that looks a little bit more special. and then I'll leave that here, and then I'll save Photoshop. So now I do have a couple things in my library. One of the reasons why I would use this workflow as opposed to going to any other space is because oftentimes I love being able to access, first of all, going from experimenting to directly marketing in Photoshop. So convenient, so chill, and I really like that. Also, I have access to my libraries, so I can add some supporting graphics and things that I've had to keep that brand consistency, right? And you can build those graphics little by little, but they do pay off, especially when you're trying to do like cool things like this. So I'm gonna do a little bit of texture on that banner as well. And that's just a cool vector that I had placed in my libraries for my brand. So let's see if it has a different blending mode. I think I'm gonna make it even the same color. So I'm gonna double click that. And I think the color theme that we've got going on here is this bright yellow, or the Wes Anderson yellow that everyone's using in captions. So I think that's the one that we'll use. Okay. And I think now I can put it at 100 for now, and then see if I have a different blending mode. No, definitely gotta be a little bit more subtle then. But I'm liking this. It's kind of imitating the attitudes of my photos. So there you go. I've got my banner in place. You can always increase and decrease that sizing. Now, here's the thing about Behance. The width is 1400, but the height could be infinite. It could be whatever you want. So there's so much room here to play around. So right here, one of the things I like to do, just to be kind of a master of marketing, because you got to think of everything, right? One of the things I recognize is that it's important for me to have the text directly on the Behance UI, just because it's good SEO, which means search engine optimization. I used to do it where the text would live here on the photo, but that's not recognizable by Google or all of these things that search the web, the World Wide Web. So that's a nice pro tip here. Whenever you have text and you want your projects to be discoverable, you want to keep that text as editable as possible. So we'll leave that room once we jump into Behance. All right, so in here, I want my original photo. So we're gonna start off with my original photo. Let's move this one over. Let's do 2 more here. 2 more artboards here. So the goal will be to showcase my original photo. And that would be not this one, but this one. Okay. So something that I think about a lot when I'm trying to showcase my work is storytelling. How can I invite somebody to recognize that I thought about this and there's like a workaround, there's a process in our minds as to why we're pursuing this project at all. So for me, it was an investigation, or for us, it was a challenge here in Photoshop to explore how we can reinterpret portraits. So I definitely want to introduce that. And so I'm gonna help guide everyone that might see my project by adding some headlines. Like, for example, I'll say here that this was the original image, right? So this is the original image before we played with textures, right? And I think in here, I also have got some cool, let me see if I have any. You can see I have a big library of textures and stuff like this. I love keeping all these things in here. It just gives me more opportunity to play around and be fast. Okay, so I kind of like this grid right here. It kind of gives it that vibe that it's, you know, it's kind of like work in progress. So I'm gonna put it behind here, change the color. Let's see if I can change the color of this one. Yeah, that's the one. So color overlay. And we've got, oops, I accidentally tossed it into my other artboard. Look at that. Isn't that funny? So easy to move them around, almost too easy. So what I can do is I drag it directly from here and I'll just put it into my main artboard. Now that looks a little too intense, so let's lower the opacity. And so that's starting to imitate that kind of vibe of, hey, this is something I'm gonna edit. I'm gonna draw and play with. Okay, so now we want to talk about the secondary images, right? Once it's been played with. I think I'm gonna remove this one and I'm just gonna keep adding in this direction. So now this is one edited image. So this is the sequence, right? We go from original, we're trying to showcase process as much as possible, to edited with texture number 1. And in here, I can divulge a lot, right? I can say, hey, I was able to generate this. So we're going to duplicate the text. I can see that I have a need for text. So in here, we'll duplicate this layer, which is so far our headline or our title. So let's duplicate it to keep consistency. And one of my favorite ways to do that is I go here, duplicate layer. And it's going to tell me, hey, do you want to put it in a different artboard? And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I want. In artboard, image copy to. And just like that, it's going to add it in here, which is so cool. I'll do the same thing again, duplicate layer, and this time on image copy 3. So now we have consistency, right? Original image. And that's like glass texture created digital glass texture. I'll just say digital glass texture here. Digital. This was super fun, folks. Like, just I hope you had as much fun as I did just exploring this, because I really challenged myself too, trying to find different ways to introduce textures, right, into our workflows. So digital glass texture right there. So now we've got number 2. Let's play with this one, transfer it over here, and let's talk about the variation. I want to make sure they're the same size. Consistency, I think, is key in any one of these projects, and we'll call this one scanned textures. So cool. I'm loving this already. It just gives people an insider. I'm just going to duplicate that by holding Alt. You duplicate it, you duplicate the artboard, but with the art in it, which is even better because I don't have to duplicate any text this time around. And what was the third one? Final edited. We've had this one, and we had, oh, the double exposure. We love the double exposure. So I didn't export this one. So what I'll do here is hit Shift Command E. That merges everything. Never mind. Shift Command Alt E. And what that'll do is give us a JPEG of this image. So let's duplicate this, much like we did earlier. And what we'll do here is this time we'll send it to a different project, not a different artboard, but a different project. My project is called Photoshop Behance Marketing Suite. It's asking me, which artboard do you want? And I'm thinking image 4. Cool. Boom. You could even change the name at that point. So let's see where it appears. It's right here and it's gigantic. So let's decrease it. That's why it's kind of better to export before if you're worried about the resolution, but I think this will be fine for sample's sake. I'm actually going to make sure this is a same variety of like ratio. So I'm going to add a mask here real quick, unlink it and reposition it in there. Boom. So now we have 3 variations. We got an intro and 3 variations. Now I have so much more to share here, right? Like, for example, what kind of texture do we use? Things like this. I love introducing like as much value as possible in the journey of like the discovering how a project is done in the background, right? And that's always really cool. So before we dive into more beacons, because we do have as little time as possible here, I do want to show you. So this is so far what I've got, which is really cool. Once you're ready, I do want to show you how to export and some really key elements here. So once you're ready, this is the way you would export. You'll go here, export artboards to files, right? That's one way to do it. You can export each artboard, and it says here, artboard only. And that's the way you want to do it. Hit that JPEG or PNG. Those are all acceptable. Even GIFs are acceptable, which is so cool. Now let me show you another variation of how I use artboards for my marketing of my work, to celebrate my work. So here's an example of, let me see. Where are you? Here you go. Here's an example of how I like to use artboards. So these are all artboards, and you might see on my Instagram, you might have seen some of these posted already. And you can see here that I duplicate and repeat. I create a layout that befits what I want to talk about. For me, it's education and showcasing my process. For you, it could be something else altogether. It could be, hey, I learned something new in this experience. We love like navigating the people's workflows, and you know, I think we really love being invited into the behind the scenes of things, right? So let's say I want to repurpose one of these and showcase my work. So this is a good way to do it. So I can say something like, let's say this one here. So I might want to remove this and grab my final edited images. And this is a 4x5 that is the right ratio for me to play with carousels on social media. So that's perfect. I've got an icon here, but I don't think I'm gonna need that. So already that's so cool. One of the things I like doing in mine is adding like text and things like this. As you can tell, I love layout design. My background is in graphic design, so that's one of my favorite things to play around with. But what's so cool about this is that you can use these artboards like I'm doing here to reiterate social media posts. So you don't have to be caught up in like recreating something over and over. I can just go in here and change the copy and talk about how, I see I had some, I had like a sentence here I wrote earlier. Like this project was something we worked on together on Adobe Live. So that's so cool. Adobe Live textures. And you're watching me in real time create these really quick social media posts. And of course, this is my layout. However, you're welcome to create your own. The goal is that you templatize them and repurpose as many times as you can. I have these little circles here to emphasize things, but maybe on this case, I won't use them. So I can just turn them off. It's that simple. And something I love about artboards is that you can create carousels that are unified. So I often use Adobe Express for this too, by the way, but in Adobe Express, I can't put them side by side in the same way that I can here. So here's an example of something I can do. So for example, I can right click this in order to really templatize it, rasterize, convert to smart object. Okay, double click. And what we'll do is we'll drop a file in here, one of our files. Let's do this one. Press enter, press save. And there it is. There's the first half, right? We'll do the same thing to this one. Rasterize. I'm only rasterizing it so that I don't affect the original photo. Make sure to do that at least once. So that's how you're better off templatizing. Convert to smart object, double click, drop in that layer. Boom, press save, and then there you go. You didn't have to do that matching all over again. There it is. We got some cute emojis there that lets people feel like, okay, this carousel is interactive. I'm still sliding through. So just like that, I created a quick Instagram 4x5 carousel, and also I created a Behance post. Isn't that awesome? I mean, there's so many opportunities here to play around with marketing and creating templates by using these very simple things called artboards and smart objects. I think smart objects is a very key element. Now, finally, for those of you who want to revisit the restreams, make sure to go here to my website, sinlagos.com, where I publish any Adobe live stream that I've ever done here on Adobe Live, and also subscribe to my channel on YouTube, where I go live on Wednesdays, except if I'm traveling. That's kind of hard, but you can click here and go to my YouTube channel, where I go live and explore all the different mediums like design, photography, and video. Again, my name is Sin Lagos, folks. Thank you so much for being with me, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.